Okay, welcome to the Bennett Innovations podcast, where we talk about building with AI tools and software architecture. I'm Lindsay Macvean, and with me is my co-host Emilie. We are picking up where we left off straight away because I was rambling about building software teams, and now Emilie is going to have a chance to sort of ask some questions that might be insightful.
Yeah. So what we were talking about last time when we spoke about how you did a 360 where people around you rated you and you kind of sat there as well. And when I asked about how the information was given back to you, that is such a critical point. And I remember we did that in the personality trait assessment training where we had to give back information to people. And I was unfortunate in the group because I was given a guy in the team who had no English, and he filled out the form, and I don't think he did it right because he was basically graded, I mean, like 0 and everything, which meant he didn't have sociable skill. Like it was pretty bad results, and I had to give him back the results, which was a bit terrifying. But we were also given the task of giving them back to people, and the other person would either have a nice reaction, an angry reaction, or slam the table down or do whatever. But it was so important how you gave back that instead of doing it in a negative way where you're saying, well, actually, you scored low in all these areas. You were kind of saying about how even though these results were in a certain way, they could actually be used to do another type of role, or it may not be the role that they're looking
My experience in the real world as such
for.
of over my career has
Yeah,
been startups are too busy and fraught to do much HR.
yeah,
So you're early, you don't have an HR team. Initially, your HR team consists of hiring. You don't have that kind of HR practice that you're talking about. Once you get large enough to have that and worry about that, then the businesses I've worked in that have that are um they don't necessarily have the expertise in the HR to know that nuance.
yeah,
They might just sort of pick up a software tool online and say, everyone just do a 360
yeah,
assessment or whatever. And so
yeah,
there wasn't much value in it that I could see. The value, in positive businesses, what I've seen the way it works is you've got strong leadership and the values are being broadcast from the top, and the managers underneath them are inculcating that value. And really, if someone is just not a great performer or is not gelling with the team, it becomes apparent, and the manager in charge of them, has a chat with the other senior people and it's like, this guy just isn't working out, and then you sit them down and you have to get rid of them. But even in the corporate land, in once you get to really big, when you do those kinds of assessments, what I find is it's more of a checkbox exercise.
yeah,
It's basically the same thing that I talked about just now with managers kind of knowing what's going on. That is still being happening in the larger corporates, as far as I can see. And then they claim that they've got an HR type assessment system, but in reality, it's just like, okay, you got to do your 360 or you got to do your whatever assessment. You go in, you just check the boxes quickly, whatever. And
you're
then
done.
maybe someone looks at it. I don't know. Maybe someone doesn't. Maybe some data analyst somewhere way off in the business sees
Yeah.
like, oh, this team is unhappy. But I haven't really seen, at least in my experience, affect what you're talking about, like the ideal actually occurring.
I think that's where it's failing a lot, and I think that's why a lot of people end up leaving teams. I think that's why a lot of people don't feel valued. You spoke earlier about how businesses want people to. You were saying about, is it startups want to hire people who already have those skills
Yeah,
because they don't want to reinvest in them. But if you invest in that person, and
yeah.
if you're willing to do the time, and if they're lacking in one area, and you put them on a training program or do whatever with them, which can be more money, could be a bigger overhead, but it also means that you're not going to have to hire somebody else because they feel indebted to the company, which isn't necessarily a good thing, but they feel loyal to the company because you've invested your time, you've invested money in them. So if you hire someone and you do that, even though you may spend more money at that point, they may have less chance of leaving the company. So then you're not risking that retraining again of hiring somebody else and going
Well,
through the whole process again.
let's talk about some horror stories where things haven't gone right.
Yeah.
Two of them I think of. First one is a startup I was advising. and they needed a developer, and it was still early. I don't know if we had any developers. It was just me advising them, but they wanted to do the hiring at that stage, and so they hired like a friend. And it was like, oh, there's a guy, he's local, he was great at computers when I was a buddy with him a few years ago. And they hired him, and it was a disaster. Didn't work
Yeah.
out. He just, for many reasons, both his personality, but also just his capability wasn't there.
But you're friends with the person. You haven't necessarily worked with the person. You don't know what it's like
Yeah,
to work with them and
yeah,
see them as a mate. You know them as a mate. You know that like for
yeah,
example, you and
yeah.
me as
So,
siblings.
so that company put in better hiring practices after that, after they had to get, and it was expensive and long to actually figure out that it wasn't working and then lay that person off. Um, what's another horror story? In the corporate world, I have seen this happen, where you'll be given a bunch of candidates by those recruiters and headhunters, and you'll interview them. Um, but uh, often in this particular case I'm thinking of, they seem to demonstrate the good skills, but I don't think they came on camera, which is amazing that it can still get fly in the corporate world. I think they said they had a problem with the camera, but they were good, so we got them. But it became apparent very quickly that it actually appeared that it was a group of them acting as one person. And so it was different people coming online. I mean, they were claiming all to be the same person, but I
Yeah.
could see that something was really off. So we had to get rid of them. But I mean, I've heard of that in the corporate world before, even to the extent of like an executive getting hired, and actually all their work is being done by a team in India, and they're not doing anything. They're just a good front person, and they actually turn up to the office, and they're being paid like 200 grand a year, and they're paying like 100 grand to a team in India, and they do nothing for work. Uh,
Yeah.
or you get people. I mean, I'm more sympathetic with this, but you can take it to the extreme. People who are working multiple jobs at once, to the extent of doing like 11 jobs, with different monitors all at the same time, which is getting a bit crazy. But I mean, I work, different gigs, but I try to manage my time and focus my time where it's actually expected. But yeah, I don't know what that says to what you're saying.
Well, I was just thinking about it there, and I don't know if you've ever experienced it, and I don't know if it would be a good idea. But when when you've been hiring the team, have you
Yeah.
felt a difference to when you haven't been in any of that decision making? And do you think I don't know if this is a balmy idea, but do you think there's ever the opportunity in the future where the whole tech team has a deciding on who they hire? Do you think there's ever going to be an opportunity do you think that would just be a bit of chaos? They wouldn't be because I'm just thinking if you're joining someone as the team and if everybody agrees in that decision, do you think it makes a difference?
One, no, you can't do the whole team. And the reason is because most people aren't thinking about these things, like particularly developers. They're just thinking
Yeah,
in terms of noughts and crosses.
yeah,
Um,
they don't
they,
really care.
I mean, that is changing with AI development. People have to start thinking about this a bit more. But um, but you do want to get like a sense from an existing lead developer or someone that is, if you've managed to build your initial base of developers
Yeah,
using like whoever is naturally rising to the top of that as a good judge on whether the person you're bringing in. Now you have to be
yeah,
careful about jealousy and a sense of displacement. I've talked to you before about forming, storming, norming, performing. uh
yeah,
and you go through that iteration of every time someone joins.
yeah,
You have to go through the storming again. Initial forming, everyone's happy, oh, hey, new person. Then
yeah,
storming, this guy's like a bit annoying and does things in a different way, and I'm feeling worried because maybe he's trying to take my job or whatever. And then you go through norming, like, okay, it's going to be okay, and then you actually start working together, and then it all starts all over again when you bring in a new person or someone leaves or something changes in the business. So this cycle is constantly happening in both small and large scale,
yeah,
between every two people and a whole team. So
yeah,
you just kind of this is the grit of creating an effective team. But the other thing I was going to say is, as we talked about before, it's all shrinking a little bit because AI can do a lot of the drudgery that you had to pay for to separate developers. And
yeah,
now you only need sort of, one or two guys where before you needed five, or
Yeah.
one guy where you needed three. Um, and so trying to figure out what that skill set is of that type of person that you need in your state of the business that you have is a real challenge right now.
I found it really interesting when you were doing interviews before, and we had that guy on, and he was clearly using AI to answer the questions.
Yeah,
And I was saying to you, "What? That's ridiculous. You can't hire someone." And you actually replied and you said, "Well, if they're actually, even if they are using AI, if they're using it in such a smart way to be able to do it,
yeah,
to be able to get through that interview, then what's the matter with that?" And I found that interesting because that's a lot of people like cheating, but no.
yeah. Well, yeah. So there's the cheating component, but so what I saw when we were doing that group of interviews, I think you're talking about, it
Yeah.
was that a high percentage of them were using AI, obviously,
Yeah.
but they were using it in a dumb way. They
Yeah.
they would literally like I would ask a question and they either had it on like voice mode or whatever, but they would actually just basically just read back whatever the AI said. And
Yeah.
without any priming or understanding of how AI needs to be configured to actually get it to say something intelligent. And so their answer, I would say, what is GitHub or something? And they would say GitHub is a version control system. And I'd be like, yeah, yeah, dumb, dumb. Yeah, I know. Like, tell me something smart. And
Yeah.
but then that guy that you're talking about came on, and I was posing increasingly hard questions to him where I was saying, what do you find is the challenge with using a NoSQL database with this type of data? And he would say, and he would come back quick. And there was a degree where it was like, okay, there was no way that he could have been that smart and to when a broad range of different things to give me that smart an answer. He must be using AI. But the
Mhm.
fact that he was able to come back so fast meant that he probably had configured his AI in a way where he'd sort of put in a bunch of information ahead of time, like everything he thought might come up, and
Yeah.
he'd set it up to give him short, quick answers just to prompt him to be able to say the smart thing. And
Yeah.
that is exactly how you should be using AI. So I want that guy. I want that guy that's using AI smart. Um, I think I can't remember what the CEO there decided. I think he didn't go with that guy because that he appeared to be using AI, which I think is a shame. But
Yeah.
but intuition also plays a part. I think the intuition was maybe if he's doing that, maybe he's not telling the truth about other things. I try to be honest about even if I'm on an interview, I'd be like, I like do something and I'll be like, look, I've got my AI crib sheet on the left here, but I can tell you an experience. If you link it to experiences and be like, this is my experience, and my AI has just reminded me that this is the term that I'm looking for, and
Yeah.
that would be like, I think the smart way to approach it with more honesty. You
Because
know.
it's interesting because I used to hate AI, and then you kind of got me started on it and you kind of showed me different ways of using it, and it's really helped me out. And I have a friend from university, and she used to use it for everything. She loved it. And then once she graduated and she was trying to find work, I think she does marketing. I think she began to realize how much AI was kind of taking over her job, and a lot of people she
Yeah.
was finding it hard and hard to find work. So when I spoke to her about it recently, she was like, "Nope, I've stopped using it. I don't go near it anymore. I'd much rather do the work myself." And
Yeah.
I found that a bit unfortunate because if she was willing to, I suppose, tune into it and start adapting her work style alongside it instead of saying no, not doing it, then it could have maybe provided an advantage over
Yeah.
not doing it at all.
Do you think that was purely out of fear, or do you think there was like like a fundamental principle that she had in her head that she felt that it actually harmed her to be using the AI?
Yeah.
You felt she felt that.
Yeah, I
And
think she felt it harmful because I said to her, I went, oh, but what if, for example, you need to find research articles about this? Do you want to go scanning through articles to find them, or do you want to
yeah,
just put it into
yeah,
whatever it is and it comes back with the articles? And she was like, I'd rather search for it. Why should I have to do it? Why should I have
yeah.
to do that? I can find the articles just as quick. Which is
My my
interesting.
my view on that is that if you search for it, you're using Google. If you're using Google, you're using an AI, but it's just
Yeah,
by another name.
yeah,
So that's a little naive. But I get the sentiment. I get the sentiment that like at a deep level, it's like this is anti-human in some way.
yeah.
But
But
go
is
on.
it though? Because we have to collaborate with it. It's not
Yeah.
anti necessarily. It's joining forces, I suppose, in some ways. And I don't see it as being anti-human.
I agree. I just want to acknowledge that feeling that I think
Yeah,
some people, perhaps a lot of the world, is starting to feel a little bit. And also, you get it when you go on social media or you're reading, even your paper, newspaper these days. A
yeah,
lot of that content seems to be like people just sort of cheated and got AI to write it, and you can sense it. You can sense it in the like, this is the real story, or one of these kind of phrases that the AI often uses, and the obviously the EM dashes and things like that, and so being like, you want you want a human on the other side to be communicating to you.
yeah,
You don't want to just be reading regurgitated crap all the time. And so I get that, but I do think that I think a lot of people in their initial exposure to it have been exposed to like the retail side of ChatGPT or Grok or whatever, and because it could write their essay or could write their article, they think, oh my God, this could replace me, but it's not
yeah,
very human in the way it approaches, and I just want to get back to being real humans. But they're missing everything else it can do for them. Like you said, it can do the research, it can be a sounding board, it can be an action taker, a sorter. It's like leverage all the stuff that's stressing you out. It's about being creative, about figuring out how to take that thing and get the AI to do it for you. So, for example, for me and my family's health, I
yeah,
plugged in my health. Now, this, we talked before about handing over too much to the great AI in the sky. But setting
yeah,
that aside, I have put my health details into an AI, and I've told it to, on a regular schedule, research articles that might medical journal articles that might be interesting about a new drug or a new treatment or a new approach to something that I'm concerned about for me and my family.
yeah,
And so that is like a thing I've been thinking about. Like, if someone could do that for me, that'd be great. And I didn't have enough spare cash to hire like a full-time medical researcher to go do it for me, but the AI
yeah,
can basically do that for me. And so lots of things like that, like, hey, just sort of search through my mess of emails and find the email that dealt with this. Try and pull out all the emails associated with this issue.
yeah,
It can do that. There's all sorts of things it can do, and it's the equivalent of a lever, a mechanical advantage, as we call it, to like a lever or pulley system, which allowed us to lift more than we ever could before in history. It's the same, but with
yeah.
brain power. It now allows us to lift more than we ever could before using this technology. Um,
I found it an interest, like weirdly enough, I found it's instilled more confidence in my thinking because I used to struggle with, and this is like on a minor way, but I used to struggle with writing emails. For
yeah,
example, I used to spend ages rereading the email, going, "Oh God, how does that sound? Does that sound all right? Is that, you know?" And then I started using for a little bit. I put in ChatGPT, just write me an email for that, and it
yeah,
would say exactly what I would have said anyway.
yeah,
So
yeah,
now I just write the email and I feel confident in that because I've asked kind of AI whether it would do the same thing and it's kind of said basically the same thing. So
yeah,
I found it's instilled a little bit of confidence. Anyway, sorry, we've gone a little bit off topic. But I do have some more questions about written down here. What, because you mentioned the business stakeholder earlier being separated from the team
yeah,
because I found that they often when they see something going wrong, they go, "What?" I kind of go shocked, and
yeah.
they're not and techie. But do you think if they did have that tech knowledge, that they could be involved in that kind of process?
So classical agile and Scrum, Scrum methodology said
Yeah,
you should take the people that are actively making the changes and try and put them in
yeah,
a safety zone, and that's your Scrum team, and they
yeah,
should be meeting on a daily or twice daily or as needed ad hoc basis, um, to get the stuff done. And then the package of work on a weekly or 2 weekly basis should be discussed with that team, but also the additional people that need that work done.
yeah,
And so because the moment you get like a person in the room that doesn't understand or is a more senior person that might be responsible for their salaries, they're
Yeah.
going to clam up and they're going to be more cautious, or worse, they won't clam up and they'll say a bunch of stuff that scares those people. So the join between a Scrum team that's actually doing the work and the stakeholders that rely on that work has traditionally been the Scrum Master. So you're saying if business people learn more about the tech, I would say that yes, they need to constantly try and learn more about the technology,
Yeah.
um, to understand what's possible, what's not possible. So it's not just all magic to them.
Yeah.
But I still don't think that if they're not actually making the changes, they shouldn't be in that communication arena. They should be on a separate communication channel where the whole team comes to them with a ceremony like a demonstration or a planning session or whatever, where it's more structured around actually not under pressure of like, oh my God, we've got 5 days to get this thing done and this thing's broken. It's like, oh, and the stakeholder is like, oh my God, everything's broken. We're not going to deliver. So that Scrum Master needs to be the buffer point. I would say that with AI doing more work, you're going to see more business stakeholders sort of ripping out proof of concepts or things that they're like, look, I've just
Yeah.
told Replit I want a dashboard like this, and it did it. It's great. And so they're going to need to sort of relinquish that control to some people that are more technical to actually deliver it in a way that suits them for the size of business and all the other constraints, the security and stability and so on.
Yeah.
So I don't know where that takes us, but I think that yeah, you have to have a buffer point to your question.
Do you think that leads to a lack of trust between the state? Well, I know that the buffer point kind of maintains that trust, but do you think
Yeah.
that leads to trust of the person doing the work and the stakeholder? So between on both ways, because
Yeah.
they feel like they can't talk about those things. They feel like they can't be in the meetings. And do you think it leads to lack of trust, or do you think that's the
Yeah,
way it is?
trust is I can go on about trust. Like you've got like trust that the person is capable of doing it,
Yeah,
trust that they are incentivized correctly to do it,
yeah,
trust that they have a history of doing it, of delivering and communicating correctly. Like trust builds in multiple directions at once. So you have to build trust over time. You lose trust very easily if something breaks, if the system is breaking in production, if you're not delivering on time, if there is sort of drama or emails flying about the place that are confusing people and
yeah,
wasting time. Um,
yeah,
in sort of corporate land, you get the luxury of having lots of people. So you have lots
yeah,
of bodies. You have, you'll have 5 people, 10 people on a development team. You'll have a scrum master. You'll have a product owner. You'll have a business analysis designer. You'll have a like a graphic designer. Um, and not always, by the way, some budgets are small, but point is you do often get this larger buffer around the people that are actually making the code changes.
yeah,
And so that tends to build that trust in a smaller environment, particularly where there isn't a tech side to the business. So if you take like a physiotherapist or a tradesman or something, they might have 5 guys working for them or 10 guys, but they're all doing the job of whatever, physiotherapy or whatever. You might have a contract with a software company to do your website, and maybe they're offering you AI or something, but often you don't know what you don't know. So you have to, in that situation, it's often useful to get, if you're at that sort of level of like 10 employees, getting one tech guy to be the point of contact and ask the smart questions can be beneficial at that point.
yeah.
Um, but it's a question of like where you are in your business, how much cash you've got, and there's different strategies for there's many ways to skin a cat.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's let me see if any more my other ones. How did you find the hiring process between the two things? Because I kind of touched on this earlier, but between the Fiverr and between being in charge of hiring your team, how did you find those two different hiring
So
processes?
I see it like I think there's probably even more ways to do this. Um, but we were discussed in the last podcast, we discussed hiring off part-time websites and then escalating those people into full-time positions. And then I
Yeah.
discussed hiring in corporates through sort of recruiters. And then you can also do the classic kind of like advertise yourself on LinkedIn or wherever, or through your network. Oh, I also discussed hiring people through a network, but you have to be in a good network, like in Silicon Valley, to do that often. There is just not a density of highly technical people the same outside of that West Coast region in the US. Uh, Maybe you'd find it if you were in China or Hong Kong, but I don't find it as much in Europe. The differences are that when you're hiring off a part-time website, what I'd like to do is actually say, listen, you've probably got lots of little gigs. Uh,
Yeah.
if I'm a business that's building, I want to try and dominate your time, but not try and take all your time. I don't want to be so sort of egotistical as to think that given your habits and your client and your existing client base, you're just going to stop dead all other work. You need to have elasticity in your workload. So what I like to do is get to a point where I can hire them for say 20 hours a week. So it's probably more than half their time that they've actually working on anything, but
Yeah.
not hire them full time so they can do other bits and bobs with other projects or whatever as they want.
Yeah.
But I get the primary focus of their thinking and thought time. And
Yeah.
so that's one way to do it. And building up that team, eventually, if you get large enough as a business, you can, bring people in full time. But preferably, again, you do want an anchor point in any business who is your person responsible for technology. And
Yeah.
they kind of need to be more than 50% on technology. You can't be giving that person all sorts of other projects. Maybe they can do a few other things, but really, if when you get to that stage and if you're building some tech stuff, and everyone is these days, you need
Yeah.
someone that takes responsibility. And they don't necessarily have to be highly technical, but they have to be that stakeholder that
Yeah.
says, okay, I need this, and gets the updates from the teams, acts a bit as a scrum master maybe, and
Yeah.
says, explain to me what's going on, developers. Uh,
Yeah.
and if you're at a stage where you can afford a scrum master, then they're saying to the scrum master, okay, give me an update. I need an update every day on what's going on and what's
Yeah.
blocking. And if there's something blocking that the team can't solve themselves, I'll go to the rest of the company and try and figure out that thing for you. And make decisions like, okay, what are the trade-offs? Tell me, if we do it this way, what does it mean in the future? If we do it this way, what does it mean in the future?
Yeah.
So that's a skill set. That's really being a CTO in many
Yeah.
businesses. And I've done that. I've been a fractional CTO, been a full-time CTO for small businesses, not large ones. But yeah, I don't know if that
Is that quite stressful being a CTO?
um not
Such a broad question, but yeah, is
not
it quite
not
stressful?
any more than anything else. Being a CTO in a business that's not working is stressful, but it's stressful for everyone if the business isn't working.
Yeah.
Being a CTO in a business that is working and making money is exciting.
Yeah.
And but I've made many mistakes, things that I could have done better, and I hope to do better in the future. I was just like, "Ah, I could do that better. I would hope I get another chance to try again and build another team and see how we can make that better."
It's all
Uh,
part of the process, isn't it? It's
yeah,
all part of the process because if you didn't have that, then you wouldn't realize it. So
yeah,
it's all part of the process, going
yeah,
and learning.
yeah.
I think that covers all my questions, Liz.
Okay, end of the session.
And
Thanks,
that's,
James. Speak to you next
thank
time.
you. That's very interesting.
Bye. Bye.